The night air hung heavy over Norfolk, Virginia, as a witness's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating a scene that would forever haunt this community. Two bodies lay motionless on the ground, 23-year-old Morgan Bazemore and her 52-year-old mother, Alicia Hereford. Blood pooled beneath them, their lives extinguished in moments of violence that defied comprehension. In the distance, a figure moved away from the scene. The witness would later identify him as Kenyatta Jones, a man Morgan knew, a man who, according to authorities, transformed from acquaintance to killer in one devastating night. The dashcam captured two individuals fleeing on foot and a white car driving away. What happened in those final moments between Morgan, her mother, and Jones? What could possibly drive someone to such violence against a young woman and her mother? As the investigation unfolded, disturbing questions emerged. Why would someone with a history of violence be walking free? How could a case with video evidence and witness identification end with just an 8-year sentence? And perhaps most troubling, why did witnesses suddenly refuse to cooperate? This isn't just another crime story. This is about a justice system that failed two women. It's about a community left wondering if anyone is truly safe when violent offenders receive minimal consequences. It's about families left to serve life sentences of grief while the person responsible serves just 8 years behind bars. As we uncover how Morgan's life was cut short alongside her mother's, I need to ask, have you ever witnessed how quickly relationships can turn deadly? Let me know in the comments below. Your experiences matter, and together we can shine light on cases where justice seems to vanish into shadows. This is the story of Morgan Bazemore and Alicia Hereford, two lives ended too soon and the shocking aftermath that left a family and community demanding answers. Morgan Bazemore was just 23 years old when her life ended, a young woman with deep connections to her community and family. Those who knew her described Morgan as vibrant and caring, someone whose presence brightened rooms and whose absence now leaves an unfillable void. While public records don't extensively detail Morgan's early life or career path, what emerges clearly is her profound impact on those around her. She maintained close relationships with friends and family, creating a network of people who would later advocate fiercely for justice in her name. Morgan's relationship with Kenyatta Jones remains partially obscured in available records. What we do know is that they knew each other well enough that a witness could place him at the scene of her murder. The exact nature of their connection, whether romantic, friendly, or merely acquaintances, became a critical element in understanding the tragedy that unfolded. Alicia Hereford, Morgan's 52-year-old mother, lived a life of service to her community. As her husband Harvey would later testify during court proceedings, she served all the way up to her death. This dedication to others made the Commonwealth's handling of her murder case all the more painful for him. The Commonwealth that she served made no effort to prosecute her murder. The mother-daughter bond between Alicia and Morgan was evident to all who knew them. They shared not only DNA but also a commitment to family and community that defined their lives. In a heartbreaking letter read in court, Alicia's mother expressed how proud she was of both her daughter and granddaughter. Family members described both women as loving, dedicated individuals whose deaths created ripples of grief throughout Norfolk. Monica Bazemore, Morgan's aunt, would later stand in court and declare that neither woman deserved what happened to them, neither the violent deaths nor the inadequate justice that followed. The murders devastated multiple generations of a family. As Alicia's mother wrote in her impact statement, "There is no day without sadness and no measurement to the depth of my pain." For this grandmother, the true life sentence wasn't served by the perpetrator, but by those left behind to mourn. "My sentence is the only sentence that time will truly be served for. I will serve my life sentence until my Heavenly Father calls me home and I get to see my babies again." The details of that fatal night in Norfolk remain etched in police reports and witness testimony. What began as an ordinary evening ended with two women lying motionless on the ground, victims of violence that would shock the community. According to witness accounts, The scene was discovered when a passerby noticed two women on the ground, Morgan Bazemore and her mother, Alicia Hereford. The witness immediately checked for pulses, the gravity of the situation becoming instantly clear. Both women had been brutally attacked, their lives extinguished in what must have been moments of terror. This same witness would later provide crucial testimony, stating she recognized Kenyatta Jones at the scene. She knew Jones since he was a child through family connections, though she didn't personally know either Morgan or Alicia. This identification would become a pivotal element in the case, though not without controversy. The witness's dash camera captured critical footage, two individuals leaving the scene on foot and a white car driving away. These fleeting images, recorded in the darkness, represented the only visual evidence of the aftermath. The figures moved quickly, as if aware their actions needed to remain hidden. The neighborhood, typically quiet, erupted with emergency vehicles as first responders arrived. Blue and red lights painted nearby homes as officers secured the area, and medical personnel confirmed what the witness already knew: both women were beyond help. Initial evidence collection began immediately. Investigators photographed the scene, collected samples, and interviewed neighbors. Had anyone heard gunshots? Had anyone seen Morgan or Alicia earlier that evening? Every detail mattered in piecing together the timeline. As dawn broke, the reality settled over Norfolk. A mother and daughter had been murdered, and the person responsible had vanished into the night. The white car seen leaving the scene became a focus of the investigation, as did the identity of the two individuals captured walking away. The witness's identification of Jones raised immediate questions. Why was he there? What connection did he have to Morgan and Alicia? And most importantly, what had transpired in those final moments that led to such violence? For days afterward, residents in the area remained on edge. Two members of their community were gone, and somewhere, perhaps still among them, was the person responsible. The dash camera footage, though brief, became a haunting reminder of how quickly lives can end and how easily perpetrators can disappear. As investigators continued gathering evidence, one thing became increasingly clear: finding Kenyatta Jones was now their highest priority. The hunt for a killer had begun. As news of the double homicide spread through Norfolk, police launched an intensive search for Kenyatta Jones. Investigators worked methodically, gathering evidence from the crime scene while patrol officers canvassed the neighborhood for additional witnesses. The witness identification placed Jones at the scene, but prosecutors would need more to build a solid case. Forensic teams processed physical evidence, while detectives interviewed anyone who might have information about Jones's whereabouts or his relationship with the victims. Days passed with no sign of Jones. His absence only intensified suspicion as investigators wondered, why would an innocent man disappear? The Norfolk Police Department released his photo to local media outlets, asking the public for assistance in locating him. They emphasized that Jones should be considered dangerous, warning citizens not to approach him directly. The investigation gained federal support when the U.S. Marshals Service joined the manhunt, offering a $5,000 0-cent reward for information leading to Jones's capture. This escalation signaled the seriousness with which authorities viewed the case. A double homicide suspect was at large, potentially posing a danger to others. Behind the scenes, detectives faced mounting challenges. The dash camera footage, while valuable, provided limited visibility. The witness's identification was crucial, but defense attorneys would later challenge its reliability, suggesting it might have been influenced by social media after the fact. Investigators also began examining Jones's background, uncovering his history of violent behavior. His previous arrest for allegedly assaulting his roommate with scalding water, causing serious burns and resulting in charges of assault with intent to maim, painted a disturbing picture. This pattern of violence raised questions about whether earlier interventions might have prevented the deaths of Morgan and Alicia. As the search continued, family members of the victims grew increasingly frustrated. They wanted answers, justice, and most importantly, they wanted Jones in custody. Each passing day without an arrest deepened their pain and fear. Then came a break in the case. After days of searching, authorities announced that Jones had turned himself in, A warrant had been issued for his arrest, and rather than continuing to evade capture, Jones surrendered to police. His surrender, while bringing some relief, marked only the beginning of a legal process that would ultimately disappoint the victim's loved ones. With Jones in custody, investigators could now focus on building their case. Evidence would be presented to a grand jury seeking an indictment that would move the case toward trial. For the families of Morgan and Alicia, this represented a step toward justice, though they couldn't have known how limited that justice would ultimately be. Kenyatta Jones wasn't unknown to those in his community. The witness who identified him at the murder scene had known him since childhood through family connections, a familiarity that would later become significant in court proceedings. But behind this recognition lay a troubling history that painted a portrait of escalating violence. Jones had accumulated a record of arrests and allegations that should have raised red flags long before the night Morgan and Alicia lost their lives. Most notably, Jones had been arrested for an incident involving his roommate that demonstrated shocking brutality. According to records, he allegedly assaulted the roommate with scalding water, causing severe burns. This attack resulted in serious charges: assault with intent to maim, assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, and mayhem, a felony carrying a potential 20-year prison sentence. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, but an act that required deliberation. Heating water to the point it could cause significant injury, then using it as a weapon against someone who likely trusted him. The parallel to his later violence against Morgan, someone he also knew, suggests a pattern of betraying trust in the most harmful ways. Questions linger about how Jones remained free in the community despite this history. Had the system failed to recognize the danger he posed? Were there missed opportunities for intervention that might have saved 2 lives? After the murders, Jones's behavior further suggested consciousness of guilt. Rather than cooperating with authorities, he disappeared, prompting the manhunt that eventually led to the U.S. Marshals offering a reward. Only when a warrant was issued did he finally surrender, days after the killings. In court, Jones's demeanor would later strike observers as disturbingly detached. Family members of the victims noted how he sat slouched during proceedings, appearing disengaged from the emotional impact statements being delivered just yards away. When given the opportunity to speak at his sentencing, his only words were "No, sir," offering no explanation, no remorse, no acknowledgement of the lives he had taken. This combination of past violence, flight after the murders, and apparent indifference in court created a picture of someone who posed a genuine threat to public safety. Yet despite this history, the justice system would ultimately treat the killings of Morgan and Alicia with what their family considered shocking leniency. Jones's background raises uncomfortable questions about how society handles individuals with histories of violence. How many warning signs must appear before meaningful intervention occurs? And when someone with such a history commits the ultimate crime, how do we ensure that justice truly reflects the severity of their actions? What began as a seemingly straightforward case, with dash camera footage and a witness who identified Jones at the scene, soon unraveled due to a critical issue. Witnesses refused to cooperate. According to statements from the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, all 4 witnesses who had originally been identified in the case either refused to testify or couldn't be located when the time came for trial. This collapse of witness participation created an insurmountable obstacle for prosecutors. "We believe it was fear, based on what little bit we did get," a prosecutor explained during court proceedings. This simple statement revealed a troubling reality in many violent crime cases. Witnesses often fear retaliation if they testify against dangerous individuals. Without witness testimony, crucial evidence became inadmissible. The dash camera footage that captured individuals leaving the scene and the white car driving away couldn't be introduced in court without someone to authenticate it. Physical evidence lost context without witnesses to explain what they saw that night. Commonwealth Attorney Ramin Fatehi later highlighted this problem in a press release, explaining that without the cooperation of the key eyewitnesses, the prosecution's options became severely limited. The evidence they had gathered, while potentially compelling, couldn't be presented to a jury. This witness problem exposed a significant gap in the justice system. When witnesses fear coming forward, cases that might otherwise result in murder convictions can collapse entirely. The very people who could ensure justice for victims become unavailable precisely because the perpetrator is perceived as dangerous. Bathy would later call for a witness protection program, a resource that might have made the difference in this case. Without such protection, witnesses made the calculation that their own safety outweighed their civic duty to testify, leaving prosecutors with few options. This case highlights how witness silence can impact justice. If you were in this situation, would you come forward? Subscribe to join our community of people who believe in standing up for victims. Together, we can advocate for better witness protection and support those brave enough to testify. The witness problem created a domino effect that would ultimately lead to a plea deal that shocked and disappointed the victims' families. Without witnesses, prosecutors faced the very real possibility that Jones might walk free entirely. The choice became stark: accept a lesser charge with guaranteed prison time, or risk a trial they couldn't win. For the families of Morgan and Alicia, this situation felt like a second victimization. Not only had they lost their loved ones, but now the justice system appeared unable to hold the perpetrator fully accountable, all because witnesses wouldn't speak up. This breakdown illustrates how justice depends not just on police work and prosecutorial skill, but on the willingness of community members to participate in a process that can feel frightening and dangerous. When that participation disappears, so too does the possibility of full justice. Facing the collapse of witness cooperation, Commonwealth Attorney Ramin Fatehi and his team made a decision that would infuriate the victims' families, but, as they explained, was necessary to ensure Jones faced any consequences at all. Just days before a jury was to be seated, prosecutors offered Jones a plea deal, 2 counts of voluntary manslaughter instead of murder. The agreement stipulated a maximum of 8 years of active prison time, a fraction of what a murder conviction might have carried. The decision to reduce charges from murder to voluntary manslaughter represented a significant downgrade in how the legal system classified Jones's actions. Murder charges would have indicated premeditation or malice. Voluntary manslaughter suggested a killing committed in the heat of passion or during a sudden quarrel, a distinction that felt meaningless to the grieving families. Prosecutors later explained their reasoning. It was anticipated that Mr. Jones would claim that he knew that one of the victims carried a gun and that he shot the victims in self-defense. Without witnesses to counter this narrative, and with inadmissible evidence that couldn't be presented to a jury, the prosecution feared Jones might be acquitted entirely. The alternative in this case was not a longer sentence, Fatehi stated in a press release. It was very likely to be a dismissal for lack of evidence, and I could not permit Mr. Jones to walk free with no consequences. For the families, this explanation provided little comfort. Harvey Hereford, Alicia's husband and Morgan's father, testified that he'd been lied to until the day before the plea deal was signed. He claimed that repeated messages left for Fatehi were never returned, adding confusion and frustration to his grief. The Commonwealth Attorney's Office disputed this characterization, stating they had no record of unreturned messages. This communication breakdown only deepened the family's sense that the justice system had failed them at every turn. The plea agreement moved the case directly to sentencing, bypassing a trial that might have provided the families with more details about what happened to their loved ones. This loss of transparency, the opportunity to hear evidence presented and witnesses questioned, represented yet another loss for those mourning Morgan and Alicia. For prosecutors, the plea deal represented a pragmatic compromise, ensuring Jones would serve prison time rather than potentially walking free. For the families, it felt like surrender, an admission that the system couldn't deliver the justice their loved ones deserved. The case highlighted a painful reality in criminal justice. Sometimes prosecutors must choose between imperfect justice and no justice at all. When witnesses refuse to cooperate, when evidence becomes inadmissible, the system's ability to hold perpetrators fully accountable diminishes dramatically. As the case moved towards sentencing, the families prepared to face Jones in court not as a convicted murderer, but as someone who had admitted only to voluntary manslaughter. Their opportunity to speak would come, but the outcome had already been determined by the plea agreement that none of them supported. The Norfolk courtroom fell silent as Kenyatta Jones entered for his sentencing hearing. While the victims' families arrived prepared to pour out their grief and anger, Jones appeared notably detached. Throughout the proceedings, he sat slouched, seemingly disengaged from the emotional testimonies delivered just yards away from where he sat. The agreed-upon sentence had already been determined by the plea deal, 8 years of active prison time. This hearing would not change that outcome, but it provided the only opportunity for Morgan and Alicia's loved ones to speak directly about their loss. Morgan Bazemore, Morgan's aunt, delivered the first victim impact statement. Her words cut through the formal atmosphere of the courtroom as she directed her anger at both Jones and the justice system that had allowed such a light sentence. "There are criminals who get more time for drugs," she told the court, highlighting the perceived imbalance in how the justice system values different crimes. Her statement reflected the family's belief that 8 years was grossly inadequate for taking 2 lives. Monica didn't mince words when addressing Jones directly, calling him a monster, a boy, and a coward. She noted it had been fortunate for him that he was as good as he was at running and hiding, a reference to his days evading authorities after the murders. Mohammed then approached to read a letter from Alicia's mother, struggling to maintain composure as tears threatened to overwhelm him. The grandmother's words revealed the devastating impact of losing both her daughter and granddaughter simultaneously. "The mere fact I can't be there in court shows how this has impacted me," the letter began, explaining how grief had physically prevented her from attending. She expressed pride in both Alicia and Morgan, and described the endless pain their deaths had caused. "There's no day without sadness and no measurement to the depth of my pain." Most poignantly, she compared her suffering to Jones's punishment. "My sentence is the only sentence that time will truly be served for. I will serve my life sentence until my Heavenly Father calls me home and I get to see my babies again." Harvey Hereford, who had lost both his wife and daughter, spoke of betrayal not just by Jones, but by the justice system itself. "She served all the way up to her death," he said of his wife Alicia. "The Commonwealth that she served made no effort to prosecute her murder." When the judge asked if Jones wished to make a statement, an opportunity to express remorse, offer explanation, or address the families, his response was brief and empty: "No, sir." These 2 words, the only ones he spoke during the entire hearing, seemed to confirm the family's characterization of him as callous and unrepentant. The judge formally sentenced Jones to 10 years on each count of voluntary manslaughter, with all but 8 years suspended. The sentence also included 8 years of good behavior and an undetermined probationary period following release. As the hearing concluded, no one in the courtroom appeared satisfied. The families felt justice had been denied, prosecutors had settled for what they considered the only viable option, and Jones himself showed no visible reaction to his fate. The case of Morgan Bazemore and Alicia Hereford exposes critical gaps in our justice system, failures that allowed their killer to receive just 8 years for taking 2 lives. These systemic weaknesses deserve examination, not merely as academic concerns, but as urgent issues that could affect any community. First and most glaring is the lack of witness protection. Commonwealth Attorney Ramin Fatei explicitly called for such a program following this case, recognizing that witness fear had effectively derailed justice. When witnesses believe testifying puts their own lives at risk, they make the understandable choice to remain silent. This silence creates a devastating cycle. The more dangerous the perpetrator, the less likely witnesses will testify, making it harder to convict the most violent offenders. The case also highlights the troubling reality of plea bargaining in our courts. While plea deals are necessary tools in an overloaded system, they can produce outcomes that feel fundamentally unjust to victims' families. When prosecutors must choose between a lesser charge with guaranteed prison time or risking complete acquittal, they often opt for certainty. This pragmatic approach, while legally sound, leaves families feeling that their loved ones' lives were devalued. Another failure appears in how the system handles individuals with histories of violence. Jones's previous assault with scalding water demonstrated a capacity for extreme violence, yet he remained free to escalate to homicide. This pattern raises questions about how effectively our system identifies and intervenes with potentially dangerous individuals before they commit irreversible harm. Communication breakdowns between prosecutors and victims' families represent another systemic weakness. Harvey Hereford's claim that messages went unreturned, whether accurate or not, points to a perception that families are sidelined in the very process meant to deliver justice for their loved ones. When families feel excluded from crucial decisions like plea agreements, their trauma is compounded. Perhaps most troubling is how these failures disproportionately impact communities already struggling with violence. When residents see perpetrators receive minimal sentences, it erodes trust in the justice system and discourages cooperation with authorities. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle, where crimes go unsolved because communities have lost faith in the system's ability to deliver meaningful justice. These systemic issues demand more than sympathy. They require concrete reforms. Witness protection programs need funding and expansion. Prosecutors need resources to build stronger cases that don't collapse when witnesses withdraw. And families need genuine inclusion in the justice process, with transparent communication about the challenges and limitations of each case. The failures exposed in this case aren't unique to Norfolk. They reflect nationwide challenges in our approach to violent crime. By recognizing these weaknesses, we take the first step toward reforms that might prevent other families from experiencing the double trauma of loss followed by inadequate justice. Morgan Bazemore was just 23 years old. Her mother, Alicia Hereford, was 52. Both women were deeply connected to their community, loved by family and friends, and had their lives violently cut short. For this, their killer will serve just 8 years in prison. This outcome represents more than a personal tragedy for one family. It reveals fundamental flaws in how our justice system handles violent crime. When witnesses fear testifying, when evidence becomes inadmissible, when plea deals replace full trials, justice becomes compromised. The result is sentences that fail to reflect the true gravity of taking human life. The words of Alicia's mother continue to resonate. My sentence is the only sentence that time will truly be served for. While Kenyatta Jones will eventually walk free, the families of Morgan and Alicia face a lifetime without their loved ones. No court decision can restore what they've lost, but a more proportional sentence might have provided some sense that society properly valued the lives taken. For communities across America, this case serves as a warning. When violent offenders receive minimal consequences, everyone becomes less safe. When witnesses refuse to cooperate out of fear, dangerous individuals remain free. When families feel betrayed by the very system meant to deliver justice, trust erodes between citizens and institutions. The story of Morgan and Alicia shouldn't end with their deaths or with an inadequate sentence. Their legacy should include meaningful change, expanded witness protection programs, better support for victims' families, and a justice system that truly holds violent offenders accountable. Every share of this video helps bring awareness to cases like Morgan and Alicia's. By subscribing and sharing their story, you're helping ensure other families don't face the same injustice. Together, we can be a voice for those who can no longer speak for themselves. If you've stayed with this story until now, you understand the importance of bearing witness to these injustices. Like, comment, and share this video to spread awareness about how our system sometimes fails victims and their families. Subscribe to join a community committed to highlighting these cases and advocating for change. What changes do you think would help prevent cases like this in your community? Have you witnessed similar failures of justice where you live? Your experiences and insights matter in this conversation. Share them in the comments below. The true measure of a justice system isn't how it treats the powerful or privileged, but how it serves victims who can no longer advocate for themselves. Morgan Bazemore and Alicia Hereford deserved better. By keeping their story alive, we honor their memory and work toward a system that truly delivers justice for all victims.